I went for an eye test recently. Well, actually, it sounds horrendous, this, but I'm going to admit it and be transparent. It's 6 years since I had my last one, and I think, do they want you to go every year or is it every 2 years? I don't know. Anyway, it's 6 years, and I only went because something didn't feel right. My eyes just felt constantly tired. They were red and itchy and uncomfortable, and it seemed when I looked at my screen for any length of time, it wasn't easy anymore. It's that scenario where you realize you've been putting up with something for much longer than you should have. Eventually, I just thought, no, I should probably get this checked properly. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Leslie. I came online after my husband passed away, and since then, I've been sharing my journey building an online income. Not so much on YouTube, more on Facebook, but now I've come over to YouTube. So this is new. I'm not a YouTuber. I'm learning every time I go. I come online, I learn a little bit more, and I improve on what I'm doing. Um, so it's my online business that I'm building, and I'm also stepping into a different chapter of my life, retirement. So back to my eye test. I went in expecting the usual, maybe a small prescription change, new glasses, although my head was going into overdrive about my eyes. Some days they'd been so bad I actually thought I might be going blind. Anyway, what was the worst? That was the worst. The best was I probably needed a small prescription change because it was that was causing all the irritation. But it didn't quite go that way. He checked everything and said my prescription was actually fine, which I was totally amazed. But that was the good news. The mediocre news was I'd got dry eyes and something called blepharitis. Bel, blepharitis, I think it's called. I don't know. Weird word. And he said it's a common condition that causes the eyelids to become sore and inflamed. So common, I'd never heard of it. Anyway, I do think working at my laptop has aggravated it a little bit. Do you know when looking at your screen, you don't blink so much or not enough? Anyway, so that was part of the picture. Nothing serious, just something I'd gradually got used to. Like a lot of things, I suppose, you notice them and you just adapt, don't you? Then he mentioned cataracts. The bad news. Okay, not now, and it's not anything urgent, but likely at some point in the next 10 years, I'm going to need them. And I'll be honest, that word did make me pause. Not because I was frightened, and I'm not frightened, although I'm not over the moon at the thought of having my eyes operated on. Um, More because I wasn't expecting that. Because in my head, cataracts was something that happened to old people, really old people. And I don't think I'm really old. And suddenly, there I was sitting in the chair, hearing it mentioned as part of my own future. I left the appointment and I found myself thinking about it more than I expected. I wasn't worrying particularly, but it was there at the back of my mind because 10 years sounds like a long time when someone says it. But when you start doing the maths, 10 years ago doesn't feel very long at all. In fact, 10 years ago, I hadn't even started building online. My husband was still alive. Um, the life we had planned was so different to how it's turned out. I mean, I literally was living a completely different life. And that's when it struck me how quickly time moves. Not in a big showy way, it just quietly changes. One year becomes another, then another, and they all blend together. Have you noticed that? And before you know it, whole chapters of your life are sitting behind you, and you're left wondering, where has the time gone? Funny enough, the eye test stopped being about my eyes quite quickly. It became one of those moments that shines the light on everything else quietly in the background: health, retirement, money, future plans, the things we know are there but not necessarily think about every day. Because most of us are busy with our lives, with shopping, seeing family, going to appointments, going on holiday, doing the washing, making dinner. Doesn't matter what our age is, life stays busy regardless. And perhaps that's why these moments catch us off guard a little bit. They force us to stop for a second and acknowledge that time is moving whether we're paying attention to it or not. What I found particularly interesting was how quickly my mind started filling in the gaps. One word from a professional, and suddenly my brain had raced ahead in all sorts of future scenarios: aging, health, retirement, pensions, the future. And yet, when I thought about it properly, very little had actually changed. Cataracts are incredibly common. I have heard of cataracts, and I know the surgery is routine. And many people carry on, well, not many, that's probably a stupid thing to say. Everybody carries on living perfectly normal lives before and after treatment. I haven't heard of anything that would contradict that. The reality was much smaller than the story my mind initially created. And I think we all do that sometimes. We hear one thing, immediately start writing the next 10 chapters before we've even finished the page we're on. Do you recognize that in yourself? That's your mind in overdrive, your brain in overdrive. The appointment almost also made me think about my mum. She's nearly 91 now, and when I look at her, it changes my perspective completely, because growing up, 91 sounded ancient, yet really ancient. Yet when I sit with her now, I don't see a number. I see mum. She's the same person she's always been, the same humor, the same personality, the same opinions. She's a little bit slower. She has one of those walking frames, one of the, we call them Zimmer frames here in England. Um, and she's a little bit more dependent on help. She has a lady that lives in with her 24/7 and looks after her, but she's still very much herself. And I know when she's happy on the phone, and I can tell when she's having a bad day because she's very grumpy and in a bad mood, which she was today when I spoke to her earlier. And maybe that's the lesson I took away from the whole thing. Aging isn't something that suddenly arrives one morning. It's a series of small amounts, small moments, small reminders, little adjustments. And if we're lucky, plenty more years still ahead of us. So, yes, I went for an eye test expecting to talk about glasses, and somehow came away thinking about time. Life has a funny way of doing that sometimes, doesn't it? Anyway, thank you for watching. I really appreciate being here and spending a bit of your time with me. It's the most precious thing that we have. If you found this helpful or it resonated in some way, feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you on the next one.